front door and jumped out, anxious to do what he had to do and get back behind the concrete walls and iron gates of the compound. Everyone would be hanging around the pool by now, watching the sunset and settling into happy hour. "You've got to be kidding, Gideon. There's nothing here. Do you have any idea what it would take to clear all this out for farmland?" Dan raised a sweat-drenched arm, pointing to the front of the vehicle where bugs were swaying like smoke in the headlight beams. "And what about those?" He'd read somewhere that malaria may have killed half the people who had ever lived, another thing he had no reason to dispute. "This isn't America," Gideon said. "This is our land, our home. It is the way it is." Africans were resigned to the fact that everything on their continent was trying to kill them, but Dan saw no reason to tempt fate. "Look, I didn't mean any offense, okay? But we're already working 14 hours a day, and we're barely keeping our heads above water as it is." Gideon started walking, and Dan hurried to keep up. The African seemed to be searching for a break in the jungle, though it was a miracle he could see anything through the shades he never took off. "What about rebels?" Dan continued. "This area is right on the edge of what the government controls, isn't it? We could get—" "President Mtiti controls all of his country," Gideon said, a hint of anger audible in his voice. Behind them, Force Pee-wee went momentarily silent at the name of their fearless leader. "Of course, the president is a great man," Dan said, impressing even himself with the false reverence in his tone. Despite what most of the rest of the world thought, Umboto Mtiti was a world-class scumbag. The bugs, attracted by light and body heat, began to swarm, and Dan started back toward the land cruiser, swatting uselessly at them. "Fine, I've seen it. I'll call tomorrow and see what the hell we're supposed to do with it, but I think we both know this is bullshit." Gideon didn't respond. He'd never been particularly warm or chatty, but tonight he was verging on creepy. Dan had tried hard to like him, constantly scolding himself for racism whenever Gideon's attitude or personality pissed him off, but tonight he didn't care. Racism or not, he was ready to get the hell back to what passed for civilization. He pulled open the passenger door, and then paused when no one made a move to follow. "Ready?" Gideon walked around the back and opened the hatch. The kids watched with poorly concealed excitement. Their t-shirts and eyes glowed in what was left of the sun, as did the machete now hanging loosely from Gideon's hand. Despite his background, a childhood in a neighborhood gated against nothing, prep school and Ivy League degree, Dan understood immediately what was happening. There was a gleeful chorus when he ran, quickly drowned out by the wet slapping of leaves against his skin and his own breathing as he entered the jungle. He'd never been an athlete, but a year working outside in Africa, combined with a volume of adrenaline he'd never known he had, kept him moving forward, ignoring unseen branches as they cut his skin, stumbling over unseen obstacles and constantly adjusting his trajectory away from the bursts of gunfire that rang out every few seconds. He had no concept of how long it took, but he finally couldn't get enough air, and the obstructions he had managed to clear before became insurmountable. Soon even fear took too much energy, and his mind fixated on the mundane things that he would never do. He'd never get married, never have children, never own a home or get the real job his father had insisted on. The side of the tree next to him exploded as a bullet struck, sending wooden shrapnel into his cheek and eye. He slapped a hand to his face, unable to tell the difference between blood and sweat, and felt the fear flare again. He stumbled forward, fatigue and lack of depth perception causing him to hit the ground every few steps. The laughter of children got louder as he vomited, but it didn't seem to be getting closer. Maybe they'd become disoriented by the dense foliage and semi-darkness, too. He could make it. He just had to keep going. The farther he went, the more he would become a needle in thousands of square miles of haystack. He slowed his pace, moving more carefully than he had before. The pain in his eye continued to intensify, but he ignored it, controlling his breathing and avoiding falling again. He couldn't afford the noise, and a twisted ankle would almost certainly be fatal. The jungle's edge was completely invisible until he burst across it.